You're locked into the Liberty Flames podcast, powered by Rogers Heating and Cooling, servicing Greater Lynchburg's HVAC and electrical needs. Schedule your service today at callrogers.com.
Throw near side, picked off by the Flames.
Get ready for double coverage with Nick Pierce and Pat Kelly, the weekly podcast that takes you inside Flames football and around the nation before game day. Now, alongside former Flames All-Conference wide receiver Pat Kelly, here's your host, Nick Pierce.
Welcome back inside Double Coverage. You're on the Liberty Flames podcast, powered by Rogers Heating and Cooling. I'm Nick Pierce. Glad to have you along. He's Pat Kelly, the former All-Conference wide receiver. And it's week 3 of the college football season. No shortage of things to discuss here today on the show as the Flames take it out on the road once again this week. Liberty heading to Bowling Green for a week 3 matchup. And the Flames are trying to get back in the win column after a setback at Jacksonville State to open conference play last week. The Flames fell to the Gamecocks 34-24. We'll chop that up for you. Also take some of your questions from the mailbag coming up here in just a bit. But, Pat, it's good to talk to you again. Also, I got to say happy birthday and congratulations. All of that is in order here this week. It's a birthday for you, and it was a birthday for your second born just a few days ago. Congrats, sir.
Thank you very much. I don't know how sleep deprived I look. Don't give me any feedback on that. But
it's dad power, man. You're just powering. Dad power is like another level.
We're making it along. Last night, I think he must have known that it was my birthday, so he gave us 2 separate stretches of 3+ hours consecutive sleep. Which, given the 30 minutes to 45 minutes we were getting, I feel like I can conquer the world right now. But thank you for the birthday wishes. Glad to have another happy, healthy baby in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us name, update, height, weight, specs, hand size.
Of course. Oh, I'll break it all down. So we brought another Patrick into the world. I was named after my dad. So now we have a Patrick the third. He's going to go by Trace at, 1, 2, 3. People have, when I've mentioned he's going to go by Trace, they've been like, I don't get it. And I'm like, Trace, like a third, like Trey, you've heard of that before. So people are slowly getting up to speed on the name.
I applaud you because so many people go with Trey. There's Treys all over the place. And, Trace is something a little bit different. It's unique.
I wish I could take credit. My wife chose it. I originally said Trey, and she was like, that's too common. Let's go Trace. So she gets the credit for that one.
There you go. And see, most good ideas do come from our wives.
Fair.
We'll just throw that out there early on. Well, that's outstanding. Glad that you, mother, and baby are doing well. You got to watch a lot of football this weekend. That was the good. He was born, Saturday night, Friday night? Which?
All of them run together, whatever day the 5th was.
Friday night. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I should inform the audience, I did bring my 45-inch TV to the hospital, and I got a lot of looks from people. But as soon as we got that thing connected to the internet, we had multiple games streaming, and I let every nurse know, hey, we are a football family. We had to prioritize, of course, the child, but then a close number 2 would be our sports that weekend. So, we were watching plenty of games.
That's a veteran move right there. I'll have to do that next time I'm at the hospital. We just went off of the TV that was in the delivery room, and I remember my mother-in-law and I were there the night, because we went in at like midnight. I don't know about you guys, but we were there pretty late. And the night that Colorado beat Colorado State in overtime, I think it was Coach Prime's first year at Colorado, we were watching that game all the way until like 2:30 in the morning. So that is obviously for dads, I think, when you're waiting, it's an ideal time to get caught up on some football watching.
No doubt about that. Also, I wonder, was Jamari Person on that roster when
I guess he would have been, right? Because he was there in 24. I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah, Jamari Person would have been on that roster. Little did we know.
Yeah, great game, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So glad everyone's doing well. We're going to make it in Flames Nation here, too. It's one game. It's one loss. It's 1 week. I know everyone's hurting. Everyone's got questions, upset, whatnot. But you got to turn the page here pretty quick because you got a tough Bowling Green crowd coming up here on Saturday as the Flames go out on the road again. I think it's fair for us to sit down and dissect this game a little bit. We'll get to some mailbag questions here in just a minute. But, Pat, real quick, couple takeaways for you watching that Jack State game on Saturday, getting through the weather delay, right? A little over an hour weather delay down there. What were some of the takeaways you had from that?
Yeah, I think the low-hanging fruit that everyone is going to talk about is the run defense. Obviously, you give up 338 yards, so that's an obvious one. I won't go there. I was a little bit discouraged by some of the special teams play, honestly. You had back-to-back drives. You fielded a punt inside your own 5-yard line, and then on the next series, you've got a kickoff return that you only get to the 5-yard line. That's a whole long way to go to ask your offense to produce some points. So I was a little bit discouraged by that. You had 3 drives that started inside the 15-yard line on Saturday. That just makes life tough on your offense. So special teams was a little bit of a surprise in the return game, at least. And then again, you miss a kick that comes back to bite you later on. So special teams was really kind of a clunker for me. That was honestly one of my bigger takeaways outside of the run defense, kind of struggling to tackle, struggling to rally around and make plays, and just not being able to get off the field on third down.
Yeah, and the average starting field position for Liberty was at its own 22-yard line, to your point. They started 2 drives at the 5, 1 at the 13, 1 at the 25, 1 at the 21, 1 at the 18 in the fourth quarter. Kickoff returns were an issue. Field goals were an issue as well, right? The Flames made 1, missed 1, left 3 points out on the field there, left 4 more points out on the field with on the made field goal. Should have honestly been a touchdown because that was called off the board on a holding penalty. So total of 7 points left out there on the field. You lose by 10, 3-point game. Who knows how that thing plays out at that point. So absolutely special teams and defense. We'll talk plenty about that here in just a minute in the mailbag because that's what a lot of you were asking us about. The offensive line, that's another thing for me we look at as far as takeaways from this one. And some injuries, some ineffectiveness. That's 2 straight weeks now. That's something that Liberty absolutely has to get cleaned up. And honestly, Pat, it's a little bit surprising for me that this has been an issue.
It is because 2023, you lead the country in rushing. 2024, even though it was a little bit of a down year, you're top 5 in the country in rushing. It's tough to replace experience or experience together. I said coming into the year, it's going to take a little time to gel, which I still firmly believe. Also, with that being said, you're still kind of finding your team's identity because just because you were a team that ran the ball 40, 50 times a game doesn't mean that the 2025 Liberty Flames are going to be that team as well. We know that they like to run the ball, but with the weapons that they've got out at receiver, we're seeing Vasco pass a little bit more. A lot of that is out of necessity, but you're still finding your identity. But you're right. O-line is the one group, at least on the offensive side, that even though we didn't know what we were going to get, I kind of was giving them the benefit of the doubt just with Coach Durkin and kind of what their track record has been. But yeah, they just haven't quite figured things out just yet, which is, it's kind of funny to say because they've done a pretty decent job rushing the ball in terms of yardage the first 2 weeks of the year, but just not necessarily what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, that's fair. And Ethan Vasco threw the ball 29 times here this past week. He threw it 33 times in week 1. So you're looking at about 32 times a game. He's passing the football. I don't know that that's where Liberty wants to live. To your point, though, maybe with some of these receivers, a little bit of a different philosophy. Could just be that the Flames were trailing in this game. I don't know. But got to get the offensive line going here. You need more out of Aaron Fenimore. You need more out of the guys around him, too. And, with the injuries, Trey Badowski had to come out of the game again for a second straight week. You look at the injury bug. It hit the Flames on the defensive side as well. Mike Jarvis had to come out of that game for a bit. Then C.J. Bazille had to come out. He's in a walking boot right now. And Coach saying on Tuesday at his media availability, if he had to say right there, those guys would be doubtful. And that's not what you want to hear coming into a game like this. Now, we did talk all preseason about the depth on the defensive side of the ball. It'll sure be tested here now with some of the things that the Flames are dealing with at the moment. Let's go ahead and get to the mailbag now while we're on the subject of defense. We'll come back to the offense here in just a little bit. We'll also talk about the matchup this weekend with Bowling Green. But let's get to the mailbag. And Michael on Twitter questioning the defense and how maybe it's time for a new strategy on defense. And that's something that, he asked, is it time to change the strategy? And that's something that I asked Coach Chadwell about kind of in a roundabout way on Tuesday was, look, there were a lot of missed tackles. The Flames, he said, I think estimated gave up 110 yards after contact. And Cam Cook had a whole lot to do with that. He's a special back TCU transfer for Jacksonville State, went for, almost 200 yards here alone this past weekend. He had 195. Jacksonville State, as you said, rushed for 338. There was a lack of execution, I think, on the defensive side from the player standpoint, but then also, I don't know, Pat, I'll defer to you. What did you see from a game plan standpoint? Coach felt like they had a pretty good game plan. Maybe they weren't as aggressive as they needed to be, in his words, at times, but what did you see from a game plan standpoint and from a philosophy?
First, I would credit Jacksonville State. I mean, they've got athletes out on the field. I think they had 3 different guys that averaged nearly 7 yards per carry. The thing when you're playing those freak athletes is you can't create any daylight. You can't give them any space. And a lot of times what happens is you give space and then you get creased for these big gains. And if you're not executing, if you're not doing your assignment, if you're not filling gaps, then you're creating space for these backs to kind of squirt through. And then when you're in one-on-one or when you're in space one-on-one with a linebacker or with a corner, it's who's the better athlete a lot of times or who can make a guy miss. And Jacksonville State did that. So I think Saturday you saw some, we'll say, poor execution. And then on top of that, we saw poor tackling. And then we didn't see guys rallying to the football. You don't like to necessarily see solo tackles all the time. You'd prefer to see 3 and 4 and 5 guys rallying, trying to punch the ball out. I don't think you saw a lot of that. I also think you saw a tired Liberty football team in some of these drives.
Especially in the fourth quarter. And you look at Liberty was scoring quick on a lot of those drives, which great, from a time standpoint, you need to not make the clock your enemy, but that also means your defense is having to go right back out on the field.
It absolutely does. And when you've already allowed 250, 300 rushing yards, every single play that you're out on the field kind of just compounds on you. And so by the time you're in that fourth quarter and you've gotten gashed so much, the defense is tired. They need a break. So one thing I wanted to circle back to, though, you mentioned scheme. I'll throw a couple numbers your way. In 2023, this Liberty defense allowed 200 rushing yards in a game 0 times. In 2024, last year, pretty tough year for the Flames, they allowed more than 200 rushing yards 3 times. And then so far this year, they've already done it once, and they're allowing 261 rushing yards per game. So is it a scheme type of a thing, or is it just not executing? I can't tell you for certain, but I know those rushing yards allowed per game have steadily climbed each of the last 3 years.
Well, and that kind of leads me to the next question we got from Jordan on Twitter. He said, everyone wants to know, can we stop the opposing team from running over us? Jacksonville State is good, but this was a problem against teams that weren't as good last year as well. You look back, UMass 263 yards rushing. That was I wasn't at that game that day, so I can't speak to it from a firsthand perspective. Buffalo 222 yards rushing in the bowl game. I would kind of throw that one out a little bit because, as you well know, Liberty's roster was so depleted with the transfer portal and just playing that game a month later and where they played it in a sand trap down at the Bahamas Bowl. I don't know how much I put into that one. Also, the offense could not get anything going that day for the Flames, so the defense was out there for a lot of plays. Jacksonville State last year, 363 yards rushing here in Lynchburg. Again, you're facing that same scheme. Trey Stewart, really special back, really special year. I think each of those games kind of had its own identity. But to your point, Liberty didn't give up any 200-yard rushing games back in 2023. I don't know if it's so much a scheme thing as it is, if you look back at that 23 season, Pat, what was Liberty doing? Liberty was controlling the ball. Liberty was scoring a lot of points. Liberty was running people over. So it's awful hard for you to mount any kind of an offense against Liberty when your offense isn't on the field a whole heck of a lot.
You're exactly right. And a lot of times Liberty was getting ahead in these games, which we'll talk about needed improvements, but I'll go ahead and I won't bury the lead here. Starting fast is critical for this Liberty team. In 2023, Liberty averaged 11 points per first quarter. You know what it was in 2024? 3.6. So far this
It
year, they're
matters.
averaging 3.5 points in the first quarter. So what that tells me is the offense is taking time to try and find a rhythm. They're not getting out of the gates quickly. And that allows other teams to execute their game plan how they want to. 2023, you're going into the third and fourth quarter, forcing teams to throw the ball on you, forcing them to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. So Liberty's just not starting fast or fast enough. And we've seen it be a problem for them so far this year.
Take one more question from the mailbag, or actually a couple more here. Pun Control, a fan of the show, friend of the show. We appreciate it. The game against Jacksonville State felt like a barometer. I'll ask you that one here. That's a whole other topic here in just a minute. There were issues in all phases, but it was expected that the defense was good enough to carry this team early on until the offense clicked. We've given up 330-plus rushing yards, again, referencing Jacksonville State. And we knew what they were going to do. What's the issue? Well, we've talked a little bit about what the issue is, but there were a couple of things in Pun Control's question there that I do want to hit on. One, knowing what they're trying to do. Look, we talked about this a little bit last week. I kind of looked at Gavin Wimsatt and what his perceived skill set was and what it wasn't. We didn't think he was going to throw the football very well. He didn't. You had to know Jacksonville State was going to run the ball. This is what their identity is. This is what they're built to do. But as far as knowing what they're going to do, it's still a new coaching staff. Clint Trickett's a new offensive coordinator there. Charles Kelly's the new head coach. He's a defensive mind. I don't know that – I mean, yeah, you can kind of look at it and say they're probably going to do this, but I don't know, Pat, as a player, as someone who's been on it in a side that I haven't, sometimes it can be a little tough based on the looks they're giving you or whatnot to know for sure, hey, they are going to run it here to this side at this moment.
Nick, I'm just going to call it for what it is. You can have a game plan. It's one thing to have a plan. It's another thing to go out and execute it. And what I saw from Jacksonville State is just a more physical football team. They just went head to head and said, we are tougher than you and we're going to run through you. And that's exactly what they did. And that any Liberty player that would hear this would, I assume, or would hope would be super angry, because if you're questioning my physicality or my want to, like, you're questioning my manhood, so to speak. But I just did not see a physical Liberty football team on Saturday, which that is concerning to me. So for me, it was just the physicality and just the missed assignments were the two things that really jumped off of the screen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought that Liberty got beat at the point of attack a lot on the defensive line and the offensive line. Defensive line more so as the game went on, right? I thought early on, I thought the defense played pretty well and kind of set the tone. I think there was a 3-and-out on the first drive or two. Liberty, I think, missed an opportunity to grab control of that game early. They came out, they got the first down. I think it was a 14, 15-yard gain on offense, and then the turnover happened. And Jacksonville State took advantage of those two turnovers, the fumble and then the interception. Ethan Vasco, to his credit, took the blame for both of those things, said internal clock got him on the first one, ball's got to come out, not in a fumble. He's got to throw it. And then the second one, he looked a receiver down. So I think going back to what we said a couple of minutes ago, Liberty's got to find a way to get off to a better start offensively, start putting some of these teams behind the eight ball that they're playing and not having to play from behind and play catch-up throughout the course of a ball game, because I don't think that this team, the way that it's built, is built to have to do that a lot. Last question, then we'll kind of get into some of the positives, because there were positives from this game too, and we'll talk a little bit more about the offense. Spencer on Twitter asks a football question and then asks probably my favorite question. We'll start with the football one first. Kind of tongue-in-cheek. I'll read this verbatim. Do you think we should spend 18 of the $20 million allotted for NIL on a kicker who can make a field goal? That's a little harsh. And also, too, I'll say this, Spencer, not everyone is spending $20 million on NIL. I'll promise you that across the country. That's up to what you can spend. Not everyone's spending $20 million. Secondly, as far as the kicking game goes, a little bit of a harsh critique, but look, it's a critique nonetheless, because Liberty has reopened the kicking competition this week, and they've had trouble making the kicks. Plain and simple. Missed 2 field goals in 2 games, and we talked about it. You're leaving points on the board.
Hey, Nick, I got to side with Spencer on this one. I mean, your job is to kick the football, and when you're kicking chip shots from 30, 35 yards, those have to be guarantees. I mean, there's no way around it. We've been saying for the last 2 or 3 years, the kicking game is going to cost you a game. And sure enough, we're getting to the point where, especially when your offense isn't firing on all cylinders, every single point matters. So anytime that you're in position to get points and you don't come away with it, it's really impactful. So it's just such a quandary. You've got to get a guy who's reliable. It's especially frustrating because throughout summer camp, all you heard about was how much better the kicking game had been. And myself included, you go out there, you're watching them hit from 40, 45 with pretty good consistency.
I was out there too. I watched the same thing. They're hitting almost everything, but it's just different when you go out there on the field and the lights are on.
Lights turn on and the lights get a little bit brighter. The stakes are kind of ramped up a little bit. So I do like Spencer's question, and I do think it's cause for concern.
Well, it'll be, I think, Braden Beck and Jay Billingsley, and for that matter, I mean, it could be a number of people fighting for that job again here this week. Max Morgan a little bit banged up last week. Braden Beck had to come in on some kickoffs. So, yeah, there's some questions to answer there at the special teams unit, and we'll see what they come up with coming up here on Saturday. Now, the other part of Spencer's question that I really appreciated, which episode of Bluey made you cry the most, and why is it The Sign?
I mean, I think the answer is pretty obvious there. That episode has all of the emotions to it. You've got a wedding, you've got moving out of a house. I mean, there's all kinds of things that factor in and tug on the heartstrings. I don't know what your thoughts are, but
I think I vaguely remember that. My son loves Bluey. Grayson, I mean, he flails his arms. Da 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 da. That's the closest thing to hearing me sing on this episode or this show that you'll ever get.
Pretty good.
But he loves it, and so I've watched my fair share of Bluey. That was definitely a tough one, moving out of the house, and
maybe it hits home for me because we just moved out of our house into a new house, so maybe that it's recency bias, but that's why it's fresh.
I love that show. I think it's not just for kids; it's for adults too. I mean, there's so much humor. I mean, just little things. If you notice the backseat of the car, how messy and just flawed it is. It's real life.
That speaks to me for sure.
It's so real life, man. I absolutely love that show. If you're a parent and you're not watching Bluey, you need to get that. Even if you're not a parent, watch a show, watch an episode or two of Bluey. Appreciate all the questions rolling in here this week. Told you we were going to talk about some of the bright spots from this game. I don't want to be all, doom and gloom here or make it sound that way. We saw the return of the explosive plays on offense. Juju Gray catching a 72-yard touchdown. That was a really good play, a really good job, I thought, by Ethan Vasco. He was pressured a lot, has been pressured a lot in these first couple of games. And when you look at his numbers against pressure in his career, it's not very good. You could probably say that about a lot of quarterbacks, but Vasco, against any kind of defensive pressure, blitz or otherwise this year, is only completing 40% of his passes. Well, he threw a touchdown to Juju Gray, stepping up and eluding pressure early in this game, and that's what we all envisioned Juju being in this offense, right?
Yeah, I mean, get the ball to your playmakers, get them the ball in space, and let them do what they do well. I agree with you on that. I was also encouraged another chunk play late in the game, Dante Lee with the big touchdown. We've been saying he's a guy that can kind of take the top off of a defense, and you need those explosive plays. You look back in 2023, that Fiesta Bowl season, you had a CJ Daniels, someone that could really take the top off, which did open up the run game as well. I think you need to see more of those chunk plays, so teams have to start respecting your passing game a little more, which is going to then kind of let the run game get going too.
And speaking of the run game, I thought the backs ran harder. Caden Williams with a 25-yard run, just truck sticking people. Evan Dickens in the end zone again on a 52-yard explosive. So of our bowl predictions last week, you were the only one that hit. He went for over 100 yards, 52 of it on that one play. And he got a touchdown. So I did like the running backs. Jamari Person got involved at receiver. He led the team in catches. It was good to see the explosive. This team put up 536 yards of offense. If you do that on most,
ever lose a game when you have 500 yards of offense.
9.5 times out of 10, you're winning in that situation. So I think this was a winnable game. the Flames are not probably as far away as it felt maybe after that game. But they've got to find a way to put some of this stuff together coming up here this week, because you look at Bowling Green, it's a team that is still trying to find itself a little bit. Gosh, they've got so many new players. New coaching staff. Eddie George takes over, the Heisman winner from Ohio State, former four-time All-Pro NFL running back, a guy that's up for Hall of Fame consideration. And now he's coaching after 4 years at Tennessee State. He's in FBS football, and good for him. I think fantastic man. He's got his work ahead of him here at Bowling Green, but they competed well with Cincinnati last week. They've got some backs that they feel like, although maybe are inexperienced, are pretty good. And they've got Drew Pine at quarterback, which was a sneaky, really good get for them in the transfer portal. I think they were tops in the MAC in portal gets, transfer portal recruiting in the offseason. This is a dangerous football team, Pat.
They are. I love Drew Pine. And my wife, we've said this before, went to Notre Dame, so we've got some allegiance there. But you're right. They've got guys that can make plays all over the field. One sneaky thing, we talked about special teams just a minute ago, but they've got the number 2 kickoff return guy in the country, averaging 49 yards per return. So that's another guy to keep an eye on, Cam Petaway. If you're not locked in, he'll house one. He did last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. 98 yards.
It was season opener, first play of the season.
Yeah.
Took the opening kickoff to the house.
Yeah, so they've got guys that can take it to the house if you're not locked in. So it's going to be a really intriguing battle for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And Petaway led them in rushing last week, 72 yards in the game against Cincinnati. They were without Chris McMillan. He had a family emergency last week. They do expect him to play this week. He's their top running back. We talked about Pine. He played well enough, and as Coach George said last week, he played well enough to win the game. A lot of quick passes, quick throws. You look at his numbers from the game last week against Cincinnati, 29 of 36, but only 274 yards. So what's that tell you? The ball's coming out quick. It's quick, easy stuff. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. So they're not turning the ball over. At the same time, as Coach George alluded to this week, they're not generating enough turnovers either. They did get one against Cincinnati last week. They got a touchdown off of it. You look at that from that standpoint, then you look at it from the defensive side of things. They did give up 439 yards to the Bearcats and 34 points last week. Multiple defensive look. Maybe a little bit similar to Liberty. Actually, looks like they may have 5 DBs back there as well. It's going to be an interesting matchup here with a team that, as Coach George said, their mission is to stop the run and run the football. Well, those are two things that Liberty probably wants to emphasize here this week as well. I think it's two teams that, if maybe they're not mirror images with one another in terms of what they are, but certainly they have a lot of the same goals here.
Yeah, they certainly do. And I'm intrigued to see kind of what the game plan looks like for Bowling Green. I mean, you've got a quarterback completing 75% of his passes. You've got Liberty secondary that's done a pretty darn good job so far this year. Granted, Jacksonville State didn't have to run the ball all that much, but they looked good against Maine, I thought. So it's going to be good on good. You're going to see a very talented secondary against a proven quarterback who's been at the big time level at Missouri, at Notre Dame. I'm really excited to see how this Liberty defense responds, or if they can rebound. You'd like to think the answer is yes. But again, you talk a little bit about injuries. We talk about chunk plays. They've kind of proven that they're a team that's going to give up these big yardage situations. So you really want to see what it looks like on Saturday.
What's the Liberty offensive line going to look like on Saturday? That's something we got to come back to here, because again, the injury, but Badowski, can he go this week? Watching in practice this week, it looked like the Flames have made some changes on that O-line, either ineffectiveness or injury. I saw DJ Geth at left tackle. I saw Jupp Engbers running with the first team at left guard. Christian Williams at right tackle on the first team. I mean, those are some significant changes to be 2 games into the season.
And who knows? Maybe you're getting the shuffle or the musical chairs to try and see if something clicks for you. That could be the case. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if you see multiple guys getting reps on Saturday and you kind of play the hot hand.
Engbers, by the way, one of the newcomers for the Flames. If you look at the PFF numbers, he is the highest graded pass blocker for Liberty up to this point. So that could speak to some of that, or it could just be an attrition thing and, next man up kind of a thing. I don't know, but he's a guy that kind of excites me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a talented group. And again, kind of looking back on Durkin, kind of on the offensive line side of things, you trust him that he's going to figure out the group or he's going to figure out the scheme to get things done. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. They've just struggled so far this year.
Looking ahead to this weekend, outside of this game, I want to ask you, which teams look like contenders in Conference USA? Bigger picture here. Jacksonville State, for me, I think is one. A little bit surprising, but, I mean, you got to like the way that they played through the first two games, 1-1, 1-0 in the league. Who would you peg as, after 2 weeks here, as one of the contenders to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky are kind of the ones that immediately come to mind, but and maybe it's recency bias having watched from a hospital bed, but watched the LSU Louisiana Tech game. And I think that's a really scrappy team. They contended for a long time in that game, didn't let LSU kind of explode in terms of points and yardage. So I think they're a talented group. I know Sonny Cumbie's kind of been under the microscope a little bit. They looked good to me. They hung in there for a long time. So that's a team that I'm kind of keeping my eye on.
That kind of takes us to what are some of the intriguing games outside. And for that matter, look, I think Liberty is still very much in this thing. I mean, you've lost one conference game. I know a lot of folks have been panicking on social media here, which, take from social media what you will. Not all the fans are panicking, but, some have been vocal about it. There's a long way to go. And Liberty's going to have plenty more opportunities here and to get – to surface in this race for the conference championship game. But looking at some of the matchups this weekend, New Mexico State at Louisiana Tech, that one's intriguing to me. New Mexico State got a win at home over Tulsa. I picked against New Mexico State in that game, to be honest. But they're 2-0, and they got a chance to get to 3-0 for the first time since 1999. Now they're going to have to go on the road to do it. And Louisiana Tech playing at home, I think we'll get a little more of a sense about that La Tech team, maybe about New Mexico State as well this weekend when those two teams meet up. La Tech right now a 10-point favorite in that game. I'm surprised the line's that high for the Bulldogs, but 1-1, they've got a win over an FCS school. They hung in there with LSU despite losing the game. That should be an intriguing matchup at 7:30 Saturday night.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And you and I were talking before we came on. I think just because we just saw Jacksonville State play and put up almost 350 on the ground, them playing Georgia Southern. I think Georgia Southern's a 5-point favorite despite their record so far this year. So that's another one to kind of keep your eye on.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at that. Right now, I think it's 3.5. Georgia Southern 3.5, maybe just because they're at home. But they're 0-2 facing a 1-1 Jacksonville State team that obviously beat Liberty and hung in there with a Big 12 team. So definitely a couple of games that we'll have our eyes on this week. Certainly we'll have our eyes on the Liberty game coming up on Saturday at 5 o'clock Eastern, the Flames and the Bowling Green Falcons. Third all-time meeting. Liberty currently, as of the time of this taping, a 6.5-point favorite in that game. So obviously folks around the country still feel pretty good about the Flames and what their ability, what their potential is this year. But two 1-1 teams, both coming off road losses. Third all-time meeting, the first since 2023 when Bowling Green lost to Liberty 34-24 in Lynchburg. First time Liberty has been to Bowling Green since 2003, Pat. And the Flames were an FCS team back then, so take from that what you will. 62-3, Bowling Green won it that day. They were supposed to meet in 2020 at Bowling Green, but that game was canceled because of COVID. So that's kind of the series history here. Doesn't mean a whole hill of beans coming into this game on Saturday. But these are two teams. I think this is a 50-50 game. Look, I think this thing's going to come down to probably, as Coach George said, who can run the ball and who can stop the run.
Yeah, honestly, for me, it sounds silly, but being the third game of the year, I do feel like this is a prove-it game for Liberty. I don't want to say a must-win, but it's as close to a must-win as you can get coming off of a disappointing performance last week. So we're going to see what this team's made out of because Bowling Green, I think, is a really solid roster. So it's prove-it week for me for Liberty.
And then you think about what you got coming up after this, too. You got James Madison, big home game, biggest home game of the year after that. And then you've got Old Dominion after that on the road. Both of those teams have bye weeks going in. So JMU's off this week, Old Dominion's off next week. So you're going to get somebody's best shot each of the next 2 weeks. It's a big game here for the Flames this week. Try to get to 2-1. That's about all the time we got here this week. I don't think we got to quite everything we were trying to get to here, but we'll try again next week. We'll try to do better.
We always try.
we always put forth the old college effort here, the old college try. One thing about that JMU thing, the game there is the series just got extended. Also, before we taped this, the announcement came out, the Battle of the Blue Ridge. These two teams are going to meet 10 times over the next 16 years, all the way up to 2040. And there will be a trophy that will be created and associated with this, the Battle of the Blue Ridge. So each team will have its own trophy. I think that's really cool and a great job by both administrations making this thing happen.
Yeah, kudos to them. I just would like for the home of that trophy to reside in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Yeah. You think about the Commonwealth Cup with UVA and Virginia Tech and how long Tech was bragging that thing lived in Blacksburg. It'd be kind of cool to have something similar going on with Liberty and JMU. This has been Double Coverage on the Liberty Flames podcast, powered by Rogers Heating and Cooling, servicing Lynchburg's HVAC and electrical needs. Schedule your service today at callrogers.com. For Pat Kelly, I'm Nick Pierce. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
You've been listening to Double Coverage with Nick Pierce and Pat Kelly. Hit the subscribe button and listen each week to this and all podcasts on the Liberty Flames podcast channel from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network.